Winter moved slowly in the seaside town of Seabridge, Oregon, like the long breath of an old soul falling asleep. Fog blanketed the streets, wind moaned against worn wooden rooftops, and street lamps flickered like memories without names. In a small house at the end of a coastal slope, Maya Lin stood by the window, watching the pale afternoon light draw soft golden streaks across the wall. She was 22, her face calm, but her eyes held the quiet knowing of someone who had already learned how to fold dreams away. She once wanted to be an illustrator, but when her father, battling late-stage heart disease, could no longer make it down to the kitchen, Maya understood. Some dreams have to be shelved when reality arrives too soon. She worked at a tiny cafe near the harbor, saving every cent for his medication. Some mornings, she didn't wake from the alarm, but from the fear that one day, no one would call her daughter anymore. And then, on one cold winter afternoon, the offer arrived, knocking not on her door, but slipping quietly into her life in the form of a cream-colored envelope with no return address. The woman arrived on a gray afternoon, when the last of the day's light stretched weakly across the doorstep. She wore a charcoal wool coat, her hair neatly tied back, and her face betrayed no emotion except for quiet certainty. In her hand, she carried an old leather case and a thick cream envelope with no return address. Her name was Clara Voss, a private attorney. Her voice was brief, clipped, as if she'd long grown used to disrupting lives that stood on fragile edges. She said she was here on behalf of a client and that there was a clear offer, one that didn't waste time. The man in question was Elias Thorne, an Oscar-winning screenwriter, once celebrated for crafting characters with wounds that never quite healed. After the sudden death of his younger brother in a mountain accident, Elias disappeared from public view. He retreated to the Sonoma Hills, leaving the world to invent 1,000 stories about his vanishing, as if it were just another unwritten script. Clara sat across from Maya in the narrow kitchen. She placed the contract on the wooden table, its pages thick and cold like the winter air clinging to the windows. It was a marriage agreement, valid for 1 year, no affection required, no sharing of assets, no interference in personal lives. In return, Maya would receive a monthly stipend, a private room in Elias's estate, and most importantly, full medical coverage for her father at the state's finest private care center. Maya read the pages silently, as if flipping through a screenplay she hadn't been cast in. There was no mention of her name, no promises, no warmth, just a transaction. Cold, but capable of shifting everything. She asked softly, "Why me?" Clara didn't look away. "Because he doesn't want someone with expectations. He chooses people who still have blank spaces, people who haven't been seen yet." That night, Maya sat beside her father's bed, her fingers gripping the worn wool blanket tightly. She wasn't thinking about the money or the estate or the terms. What haunted her was the idea of waking up one morning and having no one left to call her daughter. As the night drifted on like thin mist, Maya sighed. The wedding took place on a fog-wrapped Friday morning, beneath a sky of muted gray that offered no promises, only stillness. There was no dress, no music, no flowers. Just the dark paneled library of the Thorne estate, 3 witnesses, a legal official, and a long wooden table cold as stone. Maya wore a simple white sweater, soft linen trousers, and her mother's old necklace around her neck. Elias arrived in a steel blue shirt, no ring, and no formal words beyond a quiet statement before signing. "This isn't a ceremony, just procedure." Maya nodded. It all happened so quickly, she didn't have time to feel much at all. Only the vague, surreal rhythm of a heartbeat that suddenly seemed far away. The house Elias lived in didn't feel like a residence. It felt like a world apart. Thick stone walls, endless corridors, towering windows, and staircases that curled into places no one quite reached. It was beautiful, yes, but it was beautiful in the way winter is. Distant, cinematic, and cold. After the signing, Maya was shown to her private room on the 3rd floor. White curtains swayed slightly in the breeze. The bed was neatly made with cream-colored sheets. The wooden floor gleamed from fresh polish. A single armchair waited by the window, and on the desk, a cup of tea, still warm. No one asked her to speak. No one asked if she was okay. Elias simply gave a slight nod before walking away, as if he too hadn't figured out what part he was supposed to play in this story. Maya stood still for a long time in that unfamiliar room, her fingers gently gripping the teardrop pendant at her collar. Her mother once told her, every woman needs something to remind her who she is, even when everything around her tries to say otherwise. She didn't know how she'd sleep in that strange room that night, but one thing she did know. She had chosen this path, and now she would have to learn how to stay. Their first breakfast together was colder than the glass of orange juice placed beside a dried lavender vase. On the table lay rye bread, boiled eggs, black coffee, and juice, arranged with care as if someone hoped that order might substitute for warmth. Maya sat across from Elias, beneath the faint morning light filtering through thick window panes. They ate slowly, not meeting each other's eyes. Only the soft clink of cutlery and the ticking of the old clock on the wall filled the silence. Then Elias spoke, softly, as if asking himself more than her. "Did you know," he said, eyes drifting toward the back garden, "lavender smells different in the morning than it does in the afternoon?" Maya looked up, slightly startled. Elias didn't turn to her, still watching the faint outlines of the lavender bushes outside. "In the morning it's soft, but by late afternoon it turns sharper, like memories that have been left out too long in the sun." She nodded gently, offering a small smile. It was the first time she saw him not as distant, but as someone quietly revisiting a memory. That afternoon, Maya wandered through the house and found herself in a small room at the end of the first-floor hallway. The door was slightly ajar. Inside were draped easels, an old wooden table with brushes, oil paints, and sketch paper. Everything dust-covered but not abandoned. On the walls hung unfinished paintings, a woman's hand, a cascade of loose hair, eyes gently closed. Maya stood silently, taking it in. Then Elias appeared behind her. No reprimand, just a breath, long and quiet. "My mother's," he said. "She was a painter. I haven't stepped into this room since she passed." Maya turned slowly and replied, "They look like they're still waiting for someone to finish them." He didn't respond, but that day, for the first time, he didn't leave the room before she did. It all started with a portrait. It was a small gallery show for emerging artists in downtown Santa Rosa. On a plain white wall hung a single black and white piece. Elias Thorne, in profile near a window, soft light brushing across his face, a faint crease etched between his brows. Beneath it, only a quiet credit, M. Lin. Not long after, the photo was praised by an art magazine as a surprisingly gentle gaze from a silent observer. But light never lingers long in a noisy world. Just days later, a gossip site leaked a scanned copy of the marriage contract between Maya Lin and Elias Thorne. The fallout came like wildfire in dry wind. A marriage signed like a business deal? A cinematic genius scripting his own redemption arc? Unknown girl, gold digger or image pawn? Inside the house, Maya stayed quiet. Elias burned, furious, exposed, like old wounds had been dragged into the spotlight and pierced again. He wanted to sue. But Maya, after a long, sleepless night, simply shook her head. "If the truth has already been torn open," she said, "then let's show them all of it, not just the part they want to twist." The next morning, they agreed to hold a press conference. No PR team, no ghostwriters, just Elias, standing alone beneath the sharp lights, and Maya, sitting in the front row, her gaze unwavering. "Yes," Elias began, voice low and steady. "We signed a contract, but no line in it mentioned the light she brought into this house." He paused, eyes settling on Maya for a long, still moment. "No clause said she would make me look back at myself the way she did." Maya didn't speak, but as they walked out of the press-filled room, she reached for his hand. And for the first time, Elias didn't pull away. After the press conference, the house grew strangely quiet. No more buzzing phones, no more pings of incoming headlines. Only silence stretching between two people who had once been strangers, now learning how to see each other without defense. Elias didn't ask Maya if she regretted it. Maya didn't ask if he felt exposed. They simply sat in the living room on a rainy afternoon, silver light spilling through the windows, the wind brushing over the slate roof like a muted soundtrack. Elias held one of the sketches Maya had left on his desk. A hallway soaked in afternoon sun, a door slightly ajar, and his own silhouette cast across the tiled floor. He stared at it for a long time, then quietly said, "When I write scripts, I always know the ending. I write to stay in control." He set the drawing down, turned toward her. "But you're the one part of this story I didn't see coming." Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. Sometimes all a person needs is for someone else to stay. Not to explain, not to fix, just to be there. The next day they walked through the garden. Not hand in hand, no exaggerated smiles, just side by side, letting the silence become lighter. That evening, Maya placed a sketchbook on Elias's desk. No name on the cover, just a fresh set of drawings. Scenes from the house, quiet moments from their days, and on the final page, Elias, sitting at his desk, light cascading across his shoulder. Elias opened it, turning each page slowly. When he reached the last one, he didn't say a word. He simply looked up at Maya, eyes unguarded for the first time. "There was no clause that said you'd change everything," he said. "But you did." Maya walked over and sat beside him. And for the first time, they didn't need any reason to stay, except each other. The call came on a misty morning. Maya was making tea when her phone buzzed quietly on the counter. On the other end, the nurse's voice was soft, careful, like every word might break something fragile. Her father had passed. No pain, just quietly, the way he always rose early each morning, only this time, he didn't wake again. Maya didn't cry right away. She just stood in the silence, as if grief had pressed pause on time. The kettle whistled, but she didn't move, her hand still resting on the handle, her gaze lost in the fog, as if searching for a shape she knew she'd never see again. Elias didn't speak. He just came and placed a hand on her shoulder, then gently pulled her into his arms. In that embrace, there were no consoling words, no promises, only presence, complete, silent, and close enough to remind her she wasn't alone. 3 hours later, they were on the road. Elias drove through the night back to Seabridge. Maya said nothing, only leaned her head against the glass, fingers clutching her father's old wool scarf, worn and faded, but still holding his scent. The funeral took place at the wooden house where Maya had grown up. A few relatives, a couple of old neighbors. Elias never left her side. When Maya stood to speak and her voice caught halfway through, Elias didn't say a word. He simply placed a hand on her back, not to steady her, but so she would know she was not alone. When they returned to the house in the Sonoma Hills, everything was quieter. The echoes of old scandal had faded, and the hush of mourning had softened. All that remained were two people learning how to begin again, not out of obligation, but because their presence in each other's lives had quietly become essential. Maya stepped into Elias's mother's old studio, the same room she had once quietly wandered into. Afternoon light streamed through the tall windows, touching dust-covered easels and unfinished canvases. This time, Elias followed her in, no longer stopping at the doorway. Together they dusted off shelves, opened every shutter, and rehung the half-painted works. Maya added one more frame to the wooden ledge. Her father, young and smiling beneath a coastal tree in Seabridge. On the door, Elias mounted a small hand-carved sign, his own lettering etched into the wood. Room for beginnings. No one said it out loud, but they both understood. From today, this wasn't just an old room, it was where something new began. That afternoon, they sat side by side in the fading sun, each with a cup of tea. No contract, no assigned rules, just a quiet peace that came from knowing, if tomorrow still held each other, then today was already enough. The email arrived on a quiet afternoon, sunlight slanting through the library windows, stretching across the wooden desk and Maya's sketchbook. The words were brief, but made her heart beat slow. The Strasbourg Visual Arts Center, a place she had applied to on a whim, had accepted her into their 3-month residency with a private studio and full fellowship support. She didn't hesitate, but making the right choice didn't mean it came without weight. That evening, over dinner with Elias, she said quietly, "I got invited to Paris. 3 months." He set down his spoon, not surprised, just still. "And do you want to go?" Maya nodded, then added softly, "I do, but I'm afraid of leaving you behind." Elias looked at her, his eyes not sad, only steady. "Go. Don't stay because of me. I don't need you here to feel loved. I just need to know you're living what's true for you." Maya bit her lip, almost cried, but instead of tears came a trembling, grateful smile. "I'll come back," she said. He smiled, gently, like his heart had been ready for this all along. "I'm not going anywhere," he replied, "just waiting for your light to return." Paris was wrapped in mist when she left, and Sonoma hadn't yet warmed when she returned. Maya stepped through the arrival gate at San Francisco International, camera slung across her shoulder, her eyes soft as autumn light. She wasn't older, just clearer. Elias stood waiting, hands in his pockets. No flowers, no sign, only his eyes betrayed him. Their eyes met across the space, no surprise, no questions, just a quiet knowing. She walked to him, he opened his arms. And they embraced, long, quiet, complete. "I'm home," she whispered, cheek resting against his neck. "I know," Elias replied, voice caught in his throat. And in that embrace, there was no contract, no condition, only return full, as if she had never left. 5 years passed. The house on the hill no longer echoed. It hummed with little footsteps on stone floors, the scent of fresh cookies, and laughter skipping through rows of wild lavender. Maya sketched in the garden while Elias edited nearby. 2 children, a boy and a girl, chased sunlight across the patio. "I used to be afraid I didn't belong anywhere," Maya whispered. "Now you have an entire world," Elias replied. And in that moment, with light, laughter, and love all around them, there was nothing more to say.